My name is Carol Ivy, and it is with great pleasure that I am able to introduce you tonight to one of the 1993 honorees to the Marin Women's Hall of Fame. She is a woman who has caused dramatic, dynamic change in our community. She is the Reverend Janie Spahr. Reverend Spahr, I wanted to welcome you here tonight, and I also wanted to say congratulations from all of us, and particularly from all of the women and the young women of Marin. Let's get to you right away, which is, you started out, you were a mother and wife, and you graduated from the university in religious studies.
Yes.
That's a very traditional, conservative kind of thing to do. And you are no longer very traditional and conservative.
Yeah.
What took you into that notion at that time of your life?
Well, I think for me, religious studies, of course, at Penn State University, there were 20,000 students, and there were only 3 of us in religious studies, because my religious study major was really world religions. And so I'm very interested in the interrelationship between Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism and those kinds of things. So that was a very exciting time for me. And then I always wanted to grow up. You say, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a Presbyterian minister. And of course people would go, what's a funny woman like you want to be in ministry for? You know, so, but I always wanted to do that. I had just felt deeply connected to God and to people, and passionate about both of those things integrating together for me.
Had you gone to church all your life as a child?
Yes, our family we grew up on the corner of, actually the church was called Watson Presbyterian Church. It was corner of Perrysville Avenue and Riverview Avenue. I have a twin sister, Joni. We used to go every Sunday to that church, and my family sat in the 22nd pew on the left.
And yet at that time it was difficult, if I'm correct, for girls to participate in church activities or church services. Did you feel at the time you were limited, or did you only realize later that you were limited?
Well, I think because I just felt this is what I was going to do, people would say things like, isn't that cute that she wants to do that? But I knew in my heart I was going to do it. So I really wasn't deterred, even though the culture may have said no. And so I felt passionate about it, felt really called from a deep place inside of myself. And I think as we get older, too, as women, to really honor that deep place in us that we know is true.
But as a child, as a young girl in that church in the 22nd pew,
yeah.
Did you ever feel like the boys were being allowed to do things that you couldn't do, or did it not dawn on you at that
time? Sure. I mean, just looking at how things were in classrooms and so on. But for me, it was, I had a burning desire inside of myself. And so even though I saw the really sexism that was very blatant, and all the ministers that I saw were men, but inside I knew that God includes everybody. So it was like, isn't this interesting? But I know I'm to do this.
At that time, there were no women Presbyterian ministers, were there?
Well, there were some that were beginning to be ordained, but I never met them. I didn't know about that. I just knew this is what I was to do, and then heard later about that, yes.
What about your family? How did they feel about this?
Well, again, when I said, you know, to my mother and dad and so on, I really want to do this, they would say, that's interesting. And my twin sister, Joni, was a Latin major. So the 2 of us, they were like, where did you get this? And so they were supportive. But my twin sister, you know, when you have someone who is a permanent friend, you see all your life that you're born with and so on. So we each told each other, do it, do it. So we each kind of encouraged one another as well.
So that was a real support mechanism.
It's terrific, terrific.
What happened next? You went to the University of Pennsylvania.
Penn State University.
Penn State.
Yeah.
And then you graduated. Did you get married right away?
Yes, graduated. In fact, Janie Spahr, of all the men that I dated, Jim Spahr was the only one who took seriously about seminary. I would say to people, I really want to do this, I really want to do this work. And again, they would say, oh, Janie, you're too happy to do this work. You know, usually religious people are very serious and so on. They said, you're too joyful. No, come, we'll party, we'll do other things, which I did. I love doing that. And, but it was Janie Spahr who said to me, at our senior prom at Penn State, honestly, he sent me a little card, and it said, Dear Janie, I want to be with you and people that you love all of my life. And so from then, and then it was that Christmas afterward that he asked me to marry him. And he just was a wonderful friend. Dear friend.
You're still very close.
We're very, very close. Very wonderful friends. Yeah.
What was the turning point when you realized that you were going to start doing really radical things?
Well,
That's the only way I can put it.
I can remember at the age of 14 walking into a restaurant, and I walked in and there were two women who were talking to one another, but I felt electricity between them. It was just beautiful. And I looked at them and I thought, isn't that beautiful? And a person came up behind me and said, well, Janie, those women are queer. Those are bad, dirty people. And inside, something inside of me was screaming inside saying, don't say that, don't say that. You're talking about me, but I couldn't articulate. You know, I just saw this beautiful thing and thought, that's me, but how to get that together. But it was really along the way in growing that I can remember when I married Jimmy, and you know how you talk? You say, this is who I love, this is what I did, this is what. So Jimmy and I talked all about our lives and all the people we had been with and seen and dated and all that kind of thing. And I told Jimmy that my deepest feelings were for my friends. I just knew it in the deepest part of me. And so, but we didn't know what that meant. You see, I'm 50 years old. So it's like, we heard the word queer, see, in our time, which was mythologized into saying people were queer, were women who wanted to be men and men who wanted to be, all that terrible stuff that people said about us is culturated, do you know? So I thought, well, if I'm not that, then what am I? So it really took me getting in touch. I worked with youth a lot, and I worked in the African American community in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in which people spoke their truth to me and told me their stories. And in hearing their stories, it was like something got in touch with me. Also, Jimmy caught on quickly, and he got me the book. This was like 7 years. This was after we had had Jim and Chat and so on. But he got me the book, Loving Someone Gay by Dawn Clark. And I always tell people, when you love someone deeply and you start passing like this, then you know something's off, but you know you love one another. It's like loving your best friend, but the deepest part of you isn't being met. So Jimmy put around this book called Loving Someone Gay by Dawn Clark. And he said, you ought to read this book, Janie. But it was really not until after I had really been with these youth and so on, and spoke their stories, and then began to hear other lesbian gay people's stories, that I went, oh, dear God, this is my story. And so Jim really helped me a lot to be myself.
And that must have made a considerable difference.
Well, and what he said to the boys, you know, people will say Mommy and Daddy aren't together because Mommy is a lesbian. But he said it's as much that Daddy is a heterosexual and can't meet Mommy. But no one will tell you that. And even when I did he married a wonderful friend of mine years later, Janie Spahr. And when I did their wedding, you know, it was like, he said to the boys.
You married them.
I did their wedding, yes. And they said to the boys, he said, you know, Jackie and I, in 1 year, will have more accolades than your mommy and her partner will ever have in a lifetime. So remember this. So you can see the support. And these two little boys have been incredible with me, loving me to being who I am.
Now, you were already an ordained minister.
Yes.
When this was all going on.
Yes.
What was happening with you in the church at that time?
Well, you know, I can remember the night when we went home and said to our children, this is what Jim said. I'll never forget this. Mommy, tell the boys what you found out about yourself. A wonderful thing has happened to you. And I said, Mommy has found out she's a lesbian. So, of course, my one said, Mommy, isn't this wonderful? You found it yourself. The other one said, Mommy, isn't this great? Let's tell the church. You know, of course, because we love the church. This is where the kids were grown up, and they had all these youth groups. They had all these friends. And so then we had to take Chetty aside and said, well, we don't know if the church will understand. They don't see it as a gift the way Daddy and I have found. So, so from then, I left one church to go into the inner city in Oakland, and was working with, had an incredible experience with African American, European American, and Asian, Chinese American youth, bringing them together. We had an incredible time. But it was there that people really found out I was lesbian. And so this is when the pain begins, you see. They said, Janie, we love your work, but you're lesbian. So I said, then, and they kept saying, we love you. I said, if you love me, then you would let me continue this work. But I was afraid they'd dissolve the council. So from there, I really had to face, this is who I am. I'm a lesbian woman, I'm a Presbyterian minister, and then what do I do now?
So you sacrificed your own rights as a person to continue the work, essentially.
Well, no, what I did was I said to them, and them finding out essentially who I am is that I thought I would never do ministry again. But what I found out, Carol, you see, is when you become yourself. See, what happened is people say, look what happened, you lost your job, all these things. I said, no, 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 what happened to me is I gained my life. And with that, then I never had to hide again. Hiding kills you from the inside out. So what happens is I became empowered from deep inside because I didn't have to lie or hide. And with that comes great empowerment. And so with that then, I began to get calls all over the United States from people saying, Janie, I have a lesbian daughter, I have a gay son, or I am lesbian, or I am gay. How do you integrate your sexuality and your spirituality? Will you help us? And so in the meantime then, how do I earn a living? I've got 2 little boys, you know, so I went and worked in a nursing home and bathed old people and talked with older people. And sometimes when the priest wouldn't come, whatever, they would say, after I had bathed them or put diapers on, whatever, they would say, now, Janie, will you give us communion? And so I had this incredible, with older people who had lived through so much. So the older women taught me so much about life and about what you could get through. And then I went on. Jim, I didn't know this, two years later I found out, Jim Spahr called Metropolitan Community Church in the city, which is a predominantly lesbian gay church in the Castro area. And he called them and he said, you really ought to hear Janie Spahr preach. And I went in there and was with all these lesbian gay people. It's like I looked out and went, whoa, these are my people. This is who I am. And so I introduced my whole family to them. And, you know, my children have been through all this pain of watching their mother really be told that she couldn't do the work anymore. And so I brought my children to this church and their daddy and who he was dating and my partner, you know, and what happened is I said, before I start, I want you to meet my family. And this whole congregation just stood and clapped for my children. And you can imagine what this did for us. And then I went to work there. They said, you must come here and work. So I went to work there and was in the Castro area. And then from there began this specialized ministry here in Marin, which we called Ministry of Light, now called Spectrum Center for Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual Concerns. So it's been a fabulous thing. I found my life, you see.
Some people, and possibly young people who tend to be rebellious anyway because they're young, might say, why would she stick with that? Yeah. Why wouldn't she just move on to these other things and forget all about it if they're so stick in the mud and if they're so conservative? So why?
Yeah. Well, I think I just want to say as far as Spectrum is a specialized place. It's for lesbian, gay, bisexual people and for people with AIDS and so on like that. So the church, in a way, could accept it because it was specialized, you see? But to go back into a church or to be in a church, but for me, why I stay is because this is my church. This is my church. I belong here. And supposedly, the person who founded this church was a renegade rabbi, who took on the authority of his time and said, you got to remember who you are. You got to be yourself and love people into being who they are. So, and for him, everybody was included. So my question is, who's not at the table? Who doesn't have access? Who isn't asking the questions and so on? So for me, it's a very spiritual thing. It's like we all got to be at the table, no matter what color we are, no matter what sexual orientation, whatever. And if we're not all at the table, that isn't the church I know. You see?
What is it like for you as a woman to be working within Spectrum?
Well, in Spectrum, you see, I'm fully myself. So, I mean, it's been a fantastic experience. I work with lesbian, gay, and bisexual people with HIV and AIDS. Our board is made up of heterosexual and gay and lesbian and bisexual people or transgender people. We're all different folks. So what I have found there is that I can live and do my passion, you see? And that we educate churches and schools and social service agencies and educate, because I think education is everything. And then we're trying to change a system, you see? We're trying to change churches and institutions that keep people in secret. And when people are in secret, they're lying. When they're lying, then they're in trouble. So I say about lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, I say we've got to be out. We've got to be who we are, because if we aren't, it's a spiritual suicide for us. Now my thing is, as an out person, you see, as an out lesbian, I'm here to change systems so that people come into their own power. So that's what I'm up to.
You went through something of what might be called a trial or
Yes.
a religious trial. What's
Yes.
it called within the Presbyterian?
Well, it is called a trial.
It is.
Yes, and I went through actually 3 different trials. I went through a presbytery, saying yes to me, which was wonderful. Then there was a synod trial. It was called the Synod of the Northeast had a trial in which people complained about me becoming this co-pastor. And from there, the trial itself was so interesting to hear. You know, for my sons, my one son is doing a documentary on this, so he came, you know, and he heard this. He heard this man again saying, well, that lesbian, gay people are child molesters, all these terrible things. And he said to me, Mom, this is sick here. That anyone would keep, aren't people informed? Aren't they educated about who you are and who lesbian, gay people are? He said, to hear this again, Mom, pains me tremendously. How can you stand this, you see? He said, you are far more forgiving than me, Mother.
And how long did that go on?
That went on, well, we knew that there was a brief, and so on. This went on for several months, but then the trial itself was one day. And then we waited, that was at the end of May. We waited till the end of July to get the report, and the report was this. The Synod said that they upheld my call, so we had won there 9-1. Then we went, this is fabulous, then we went to Dallas for the General Assembly Permanent Judicial Trial there. And it was Halloween weekend. Well, that's the lesbian gay holiday. I just thought that was wonderful. And so we went there. Another friend of mine was up for trial as well. And I had a person come up to me and say, well, Janie said, you know, I'm from South Carolina, and I want you to know I'm representing 7 churches here. And if you win, we will probably leave the denomination. But he said, I want to talk with you. So I thought, people said, don't talk to him, don't talk to him. I said, no, 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 I want to talk with him. So we went into a room, Carol, by ourselves, just the 2 of us, and we talked together. I talked with him about my partner, Connie, who I love so much. He talked to me about his wife. I talked about my children. He talked about his life and so on. And you know, we just talked like for an hour and a half. I said, well, let's pray together. And you know, he cried with me. We talked together, we cried. We did. You know, so he looks at me at the end, he goes, I don't know what I think about this homosexuality thing. He said, but I know that you're a Christian, you know. So again, dealing with me, come talk to me. So that's what we're trying to do, you see.
You are an incredible mentor for many young people in Marin County and all over the country today. And yet, do you remember specific mentors as you were progressing and before you got to the point where you felt as if you had reached the point where you were whole?
I had a family. I had a rascally grandmother, one that was very loving and open, the other who was a rascal. And I you know, when I'm being kind of naughty or whatever, my mother would say, you're acting just like your grandmother. And I say, oh, thank you, you know. And my family, my father really taught me so much to love people for who they are and to never buy how people describe people. But he said, you must find out for yourself who people are and go and learn from them, not from what people tell you about them. So, and then as time goes on, my associate in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is African-American. She said to me, as Presbyterian, she said, you preach from the neck up, you know? She's the one, she said, I'm going to teach you how to preach and pray with your whole body. So she's taught me how to be embodied and to love all of me. So she taught me how to preach. So when people hear me preach, they say, you have been taught by African-American people. I say, yes, thank you. You know, so it's Wanda Graham Harris, I was saying it, and then my partner, Connie Staff, Reverend Connie Staff, has taught me to love beyond what I ever thought partnership could be. Because with Jimmy, I love him, he is my dear friend, but I could never meet him in the deepest part of me. With Connie, I meet her in the deepest part of me. I love beyond anything I ever knew possible. And my sons have been my mentors, Jimmy and Chet, have really loved me into loving who I am.
Do you think women, to some extent, have a greater capacity for being able to identify and admit who they are, whatever that is?
I hope everyone does. I hope everybody has an opportunity to. I think as far as women, and even as far as lesbian women, there's no role modeling for that. Do you see what I'm saying? So in a way, maybe we have a chance to do like what my father says, is to really explore all different avenues of who we are with others. Watch this. It's like for lesbian gay people, we have inside of us little boys, women, men, all these parts of us, right? I think as lesbian gay people, we're readily open to talk about that. So that, for instance, how do I say this? With my friend Marty, who was dying, and his mother couldn't be there. She said, Marty, I can't be there. I said, so Marty, how do you feel about that? He said, oh, Janie, my friend Alex will be my mother, and when I die, I will put my head on his lap, and he will stroke my head and be my mother. Are you catching what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I want everybody to know all different sides of themselves and honor that and grow those parts. It's the same for God. Ready? I think Father God, to call God just Father, is limiting God. I think God is so much more than that and wants to come out to us as people. I think God is mutual with us. Sometimes I see her in my mind's eye as a black woman, and I know her. I think God yearns for us to be free as the way we yearn for one another to be free. I think it's all mixed up together. Am I taking this too far?
What happens when you go to Akron, Ohio and say these kinds of things?
Well, what I do is I listen to where people are and try to meet them where they are. Then what I try and do is love them into challenging to think more of who they may be and who God may be within them. See, as a woman, I believe God is not out there. It's in here, in us. So I don't take the Germanic, European, Father God, kind of theologian kind of thing. You see, I don't come there. I'm a feminist, lesbian woman. And so I come with a different viewpoint. And my experience has taught me a great deal.
If you were talking to a room full of, I'd say girls, young women, because we've moved from one to the other sort of quickly, and they're a mixture. There may be some lesbians, there may be some heterosexuals, whatever. They haven't all decided yet.
Yeah.
If you had to tell them how to approach life from the point of about age 14 or 15, what would you say? I mean, there's so many things you can say, but what would you say?
I would say, who helps loving you into you? Be around them. Be around people who love you for you and who honor you for who you are. And find them. They're there. Second, speak the truth. You know, be honest. And just live into yourself. But get around you a group of people who will love you into being all that you can be. And look for that. Whether that be that they may have peers that are that way and so on, teachers, whatever, modeling, but to find people who honor who they are and listen to them. And they know who that is. Because usually by the time we're 14, I would say that much younger.
Much younger.
Much younger. See, by the time we're 14, I can remember being 14, the peer pressure, all that kind of, much younger. When you are little, and it's from the time we are born, you know, it's to be around people who will nurture us and say to us, you can do this, you know, and to love them into being who they are. Some people tell me about their grandmothers, you see, who loves you? And if you don't find that in your family, then I say, then there are teachers, there are those of us out here in the community will be here to love you into you. Because then the self-esteem comes, you see? Then the nurturing comes and so on, and the truth-telling from me.
You are such a positive person. Aren't there moments, you mentioned earlier, when you were about to go somewhere and you hear that such and such people will leave the congregation if you're allowed to come, or drop out of the church.
Yes.
Isn't there a teeny bit of anger in you over that?
Well, inside of me I would say, come and meet us, you know, come and see who we are. Well, sometimes I call that someone saying who I may be. I read things about me. I can't believe some of the things
like
I read.
What?
Well, you know, that I'm an unrepentant sinner and that I'm trying to destroy the church. And I mean, I'm sitting here reading these things going, you know, so that hurts me. Yes, sometimes it makes me angry. It's like, you didn't even talk to me. You don't know me. You haven't called me. You know, talk with me. Talk with me. I want to talk with you. So, and that hurts, you know. Now, why I say it hurts and then I get upset, you see, it's the thing I feel. I feel. Now, watch what I'm saying here. For a long time, because I couldn't be me, Janie, I stopped feeling. That's what I say to young people. Don't stop feeling. Feel your feelings. Because what happens is you begin to die inside if you don't feel your feelings. So even for me, even if it's hurting, I say, I'm feeling. Then I can react from that place, from deep inside. So my thing is, I have to react from the deep place.
What do you see for the future, for you, Jane, and for the people you are working for? What do you see, especially the young women?
Well, again, I think for me, where I am now and so on, where I am as far as this work and so on, is to really be out and around the country and to meet young people and so on, and to meet lesbian, gay people. I don't care what people's sexual orientation is, and to really give the good news. You see, an evangelist really means spreading the good news. See? So my thing is spreading the good news about the diversity of God's people, and that everyone should be at the table and everybody should be included. Not only be included, but have access to leadership and help frame the questions and give the answers. Okay? So that's what I'm about. That's what I'm about. All right? So for the future, I want to change this Presbyterian church right now, because that's what I'm into. So that's what I'm up to try and do.
And
okay?
how are you doing?
I'm having an amazing experience meeting people. I don't know what's going to happen here, see? But watch this. I don't give my power to institutions. See, and that's what I would say to young men. Don't give your power away. It is you. Keep it in here. Come from that place. Then make coalitions of people, like women, people of color, ethnic diversity, and something like that, and begin to make coalitions of people so that when you go strong together. You see? So that's what I'm about, making coalitions to make changes, you see? Because the grassroots folks know I'm a grassroots pastor. Pulse on the people. I learn from the people teach me, okay? So I'm here to talk about changes with Presbyterians, not with my head, with all of me. And I'm not just going to do it that way.